to a lamb-based diet, and his ears were pink and itchy.
Let's look at those real quick.
I think on the NutriScan results, we noticed that there's a significant reaction to lamb. We have yet to enter pork and sweet potato, but clearly at this point, the only thing we see that's reactive is lamb. So this dog should not eat lamb.
The test results showed that indeed the dog has a lamb intolerance. There's no question that NutriScan is an amazing tool. However, food intolerances do not seem to cause aggressive behavior. Dr. Jean Dodds is also well known for her research in another area, an important one that is linked to canine aggression.
This is a dog that lives in England, and this particular dog was a very popular pet in the park in the afternoons after his caregiver, who's a teacher, would go there and either write or knit or whatever. And this dog would play with the children and play with the other dogs. And all of a sudden, when the kids tried to get him out from underneath the park bench where he was hiding, he would growl and snap at them. He never actually bit anybody, but obviously was close to it, and the guardian would keep him under control. Then she started waking up at night, and she found the dog staring at her from the bottom of the bed. She'd wake up, and he was staring, so she'd cover her head, you know, and peek out, and there he was still staring. And when we treated him, he completely got better, and he was the same happy, healthy dog. And the end of the story is he just passed away recently at 14 years of age, and he'd been well that whole time because he had a behavior problem. He was telling his caregiver, "I don't feel right." I started looking at thyroid function, realizing it wasn't really diagnosed in a complete manner by most veterinarians. Why would a Chihuahua have the same energy requirements as a St. Bernard? They don't. They eat more food per pound of body weight. They're much more active. You wouldn't want a St. Bernard with the thyroid levels of a Yorkie or a Chihuahua. They would be through a plate glass window in a flash. So I thought, wait a minute, we've got one normal range for everybody, so it can't be right. So then we started looking at hypothyroidism and all of the mental, physical, physiological changes it can cause, realizing, my God, we're missing them all as an underlying cause.
Dr. Dodds recognizes normal reference values vary depending on several factors specific to the animal's breed, gender, age, health status, and other variables. She has developed a massive data bank of information that's used to capture and track test results based on physiology.
We know that the principal reason for pet euthanasia today is abnormal behavior. So the animal didn't work out in the home for one reason or the other. How much of that abnormal behavior is caused by autoimmune thyroid disease? There are no data, but depends on the breed. If you're looking at a breed that's highly susceptible, like an English setter or a golden retriever, for example, there's two to name them, then you're probably looking at 40 to 50% of the breed that has the trait for thyroiditis. So then what happens? The profession says, oh, well, Jean thinks everything's caused by thyroid disease. No, I don't. But you have to do a complete thyroid profile to rule it in or rule it out. So that's when Diane and I got together and wrote the book, which has been amazing. Many veterinarians say they use it all the time to teach their clients about why they need to do proper testing.
There was one German Shepherd I wrote about in one of my books. I think it was Dogs Behaving Badly. And this German Shepherd was really aggressive to all puppies, especially puppies, but also other dogs and to people. And the woman had been around the circuit for 4 years, asking various trainers for advice and trying different devices and methods. And she came to see me, and I said, well, it's a German Shepherd. They're number 7 on the hit parade for hypothyroidism, out of 160, 170 AKC breeds. Let's run the thyroid, or even better, a thyroid panel. And you can run those panels in a couple of 3 places, one of which is Dr. Jean Dodds' lab, HemoPet or HemoLife down in Southern California. Came back low, treated with hormone replacement therapy, and after 5 days, she took the dog out for a walk, played with the puppy, played with another dog, allowed itself to be petted by a stranger. She said, I went home and I sat down on my step and I just cried.
So, what do we treat with thyroid disease with? We treat it with thyroxine replacement, not supplements that boost the thyroid. Okay, if the animal's treated appropriately with the right dose, not given with meals, separated, done twice a day because of the half-life in the dog, it's not like humans, then they will go back to being normal. As normal as they could be, 90%, 98%, whatever.
Dodds and Dodman were part of a team that undertook a controlled clinical trial regarding the effect of thyroid replacement in dogs with suboptimal thyroid function on owner-directed aggression.
You know, for various factors, we were obliged to conclude that while we found this slight but significant improvement, clearly more work needs to be done in the role of thyroid hormone and aggression to fully, tack this thing down and have it as sort of mainstream veterinary science.
Potentially, there's a huge number of animals that are going to be destroyed or not be happy campers in a home environment or a breeder's environment because of thyroid dysfunction, no question. It's going to continue to increase as we deplete the ozone layer, as we change the environment, as we contaminate the earth, and as we feed foods that have chemical preservatives or any other thing in them that we shouldn't feed. So clearly, we're doing the same thing to ourselves. Animals are sentinels for what's happening to us. The pet population is a canary in the mine. It just happens to us more slowly because we live longer and things take longer than they do in the pet population.
If your dog displays sudden behavioral changes, it's worth a trip to the vet for a lab workup, clinical evaluation, and a complete thyroid antibody profile.
She saw on the side of the cage a notice hanging and it just said LD. So the question is, what does LD mean? She asked, and the answer is last day.
Our next question is, are there specific foods or a diet that we can feed aggressive dogs to improve behavior? The importance of omega-3 fatty acids in terms of human health has been a highly publicized medical discovery of late. One of the best sources is fatty fish, including salmon, sardines, and tuna. Walnuts, dark green vegetables such as kale and spinach, and some vegetable oils are all good sources of omega-3s. A team at the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism concluded that, in human adults and children, clinical studies suggest that supplementation with omega-3 fatty acids may reduce aggressive, impulsive, and depressive behaviors. Less is known about its effects in dogs.
There's a lot of good studies on omega-3 fatty acids. They're not related to aggression per se. So indirectly, if you have an animal who's less sociable, who needs this for old age health and doesn't have the omega-3s, they could be more irritable and aggressive. But as a direct cause, no, it's more that it might prevent problems, make them more trainable, more sociable, and have better brain development.
In terms of the few studies with regard to canine nutrition and aggressive behavior, Professor Nicholas Dodman has been at the forefront. This veterinary behaviorist is currently the section head and program director of the Animal Behavior Clinic at Tufts Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine in North Grafton, Massachusetts. He appears regularly on radio and television.
When I first got into behavior, I had lots of trainers saying, oh, I wouldn't feed him that high-performance ration because you'll send him crazy. And I said, what do you think it is about the high-performance ration? They said, well, we don't really know. It could be the protein percentage. It could be the artificial preservatives. It could be allergy in some cases. And actually, perhaps all those things are true, but you can only research one thing at a time. And I started with protein and did 2 different studies funded by pet food companies, endorsed by the scientists in the pet food companies. One was a single-blind study, one was a double-blind study, where we showed, basically in a nutshell, that high levels of protein will make aggressive dogs more aggressive. But actually, they don't change the behavior of a normal dog who doesn't have a behavior problem. That remains totally the same. But for aggression, more protein equals more aggression. Yeah, there was one dog whose story I told in a book called, I believe it was If Only They Could Speak. And it was the last chapter, and it was called Sam's Story. And Sam was a huge Labrador with a head the size of a polar bear, was the way his owner described it. And she went into the shelter, and she saw on the side of the cage a notice hanging, and it just said LD. So the question is, what does LD mean? She asked. And the answer is last day, in brackets, on this planet. So she said, I have to take him. Well, actually, she was very brave, and she toughed it out, went home with him, sought help from just about everybody in North America. I think she was from Canada, as a matter of fact, from the Ottawa area. And she sought help from anyone she possibly could do, including me. And we all fed in what she should do, And eventually that dog turned around 100%.
A low-protein diet was an integral part of helping with Sam's aggressive behavior.
She did at one time try switching back to the high-protein food that he was on when he first came to her. And the one day that they switched that food, the dog, she saw that look come, the pupils got large, and he did this, and she was like, whoa, and went back onto the low-protein diet. But that dog became like the local hero. You know, she'd be going down the street and everyone would be saying, hey, you know, hey, Sam, how are you doing? And it was just like the end of a children's fairy tale book, how Sam pulled himself out of the mess with her help. A lot of people wonder why, you know, protein might change behavior. And the reason is because of the balance of amino acids in the protein. So amino acids are the building blocks of protein. And there's teens of them. But as far as I know, there's only one good guy when it comes to aggression, and that is tryptophan. So tryptophan's the good guy. Tryptophan is the precursor of serotonin in the brain. It needs to cross the blood-brain barrier, where it is then engineered into serotonin, which has a calming, mood-stabilizing, anti-aggressive effect. But the higher protein you give, the more of the bad guys, call them the black shirts. The more of these black shirts you get, and they outnumber, and at the turnstile into the brain, they sort of squeeze the white shirts out of the way, and they get in there and lower the concentration of serotonin in the brain. So some you change the diet, and there may be a slight or maybe even imperceptible change in aggression. Others, it can be very dramatic, almost like an on-off switch.
So, are there specific foods or a diet that we can feed aggressive dogs to improve behavior?
The least aggression was the low-protein supplemented with tryptophan. So you've got the serotonin kick and then the serotonin boost. You've got both things going on. So yeah, you can do that. So you could take a home-cooked diet that had the right amount of protein or even slightly above, and you could spike it with a little tryptophan, and it would have a calming effect.
This is one finding that most of Dogman's colleagues agree with. Dr. Gary Landsberg is a leading veterinary behaviorist in Canada. He's acted as a veterinarian, an instructor, a companion animal practitioner, and has been a radio and television host. Dr. Landsberg has also published several books on animal behavior.
So very simply put, I would not look at protein lowering and tryptophan in the food as a primary therapy, but I might use it as an adjunctive therapy with my other treatments. I've added tryptophan to diets of dogs when I thought it might be helpful, but it's part of the program and not the sole program. Therefore, it's hard to say which part of the program improved the dog. But they do improve in many cases.
Unfortunately, how to feed a lower protein diet isn't as simple as we'd like it to be.
The question becomes, what is lower protein? I mean, what exactly is that? What does an owner do? Well, of course, we wouldn't recommend any diet that was lower than a dog needs. So what a dog needs, what is the lowest protein that you can safely do? Expressed as a dry matter percentage on the side of the bag, on the little label, it will say protein ... something in the order of 18%.
What the consumer has to understand is how digestible is it, how much of that protein gets from the intestine into the bloodstream, and then to serve the cells that it should be serving, how bioavailable it is. There's also, like I was talking about before, say in tryptophan, again, that's a protein, that's an amino acid, and it's relative to other proteins which might be in the diet as well, the large neutral amino acids. So it's not just simply a low-protein diet. It may be more of these ratios and specific sources of amino acids.
Well, if you have a gluten-free food that has 30 or 32% protein, that doesn't mean that that protein is going to get into the body, because you don't feed as much of that food as you do in a food that has 22% protein. So you've got to look at the total caloric intake to maintain the metabolic demand to determine what the body sees as protein. Then how much of that protein is quality and bioavailable? So 18% protein, if only 50% of it is easily digestible, is going to be close to the borderline of inadequate. 9% is not. You need 8% for